Hi, everyone. Today we are going to have a conversation around a topic that most people are talking about today, given all of the crisis that we have had in terms of your job crisis, job layoff across probably all sectors. And the idea is, how do you create career privilege? What is it and how do you do it? How do you go about doing that? How do you go about creating career privilege? So today what we're going to talk about is understanding what career privilege means. How do you create or give yourself career privilege? What are some things you can do? What type of side hustle you can actually do to create that? And this goes beyond financial stability, right? It's more than just financial stability, but it does include having a sense of how do you do with your finance to make sure that you have that stability when you're earning a really good salary, or even if you're not earning a good salary and you're thinking about how to get to that level to to create that financial piece of it. But again, it's not just about financing piece of it, right? It's about where do I want to work? Who do I like to work with? What makes sense as a value proposition for me? And how do you get started today? What are some of the things you can do to get started today? So those are the things we're going to potentially look at. So let's begin by just understanding what is career privilege. Why are we talking about that, and why does it make sense? How do we recognize the advantage and the opportunities that we have in our professions and our professional life to create what this means about career privilege? And so I will begin by saying career privilege is this thing that you give yourself, is an advantage to say, I can leave my job, or if my job fires me, I am still able to function as a person. And also, how do I remove my identity from my job? A lot of those things that you're trying to do in terms of, most people think it is just a finance thing, but it's not. It's giving you the freedom to basically say, okay, I would really like to work with these people, or my values fit with this industry right now, and I want to pivot into this industry. Or it's just a means of, I don't want to work 24/7 anymore. I want to spend some time with my kids, my family. So it gives you this basic concept of how that privilege, and that privilege comes from the things that you do in your career to get there. So you might never become a president, you might not become a CEO, an executive, but you can still do enough to just make sure that you get there, and way beyond enough to make sure you get to that privileged state in your career that you can walk away at any time. Or again, if you get, for some reason or for something, you're laid off, well, okay, you can actually be who you are, and not just financially independent, but mentally independent and physically independent, about moving away from this job that you've probably been, I don't know, a year, 5 years, 10 years. So all these things equate, right? So here are some examples of what I think career privileges look like, right? So access to quality education and training opportunities. So in today's world, you don't have to go to the best school to get access to quality education. There are a lot of free content on social media, but there's also a lot of paid, affordable books that are being published today. More and more people are writing books because they can be self published. So you can get really good access to quality opportunities in education, right? Basically, family connections. There's a lot, people are creating generational wealth more and more every single day today. And again, most of this generational wealth might not be financial, but knowledge that they can pass on to you and provide you with these knowledges so that you can have this backdrop in terms of, okay, what is it that I want to do and how do I do it? So basically, right? So again, yes, a part of this is financial safety. So it gives you that freedom to say, okay, what happens if I lose my job? Okay, fine. But what happens if I want to leave my job? What happens if the mental stress of this job doesn't work for me anymore? So all these things make sense, right? So that's part of what I think builds up this career privilege. And again, cultural capital, understanding what's going on culturally to determine whether or not you want to work for a particular place, whether or not you want to stay with a particular group of people. So a lot of these things give you this really powerful privilege to be able to build on that, basically. And try to reflect and act on some of these things, right? Because a big part of it is reflecting on what's going on in your life, on your career path, and then how do I act in it? Take a moment to reflect on some of these things and decide, how do I act in it? So how do you give yourself this career privilege? How do you create this career privilege for yourself? And a lot of people have been thinking about this and trying, basically. So I would begin by saying, step one, try to again disassociate yourself, or at least don't make your job become your identity of who you are. So whether you get out there and you're doing this job exceptionally well, and it's time to leave, or somebody, or you're fired, then it's not tied to your identity. This is not who you are. This is just where you're working, and you're adding value to this organization as long as they're determined that you can add value. It's what it is, right? Remember, we live in a country, United States, that is where it is basically a relationship, an agreement between two, a corporation and yourself, basically, and it just says, "I work for you, you pay me," and when that moment comes that doesn't seem to fit for both of us, then something happens, right? They fire you, or you leave, or it moves on. So it's really basically. So the objective is to think about, how can let's use the terminology side hustle, right? So we talk about side hustle, but it's really just a passion project that you're doing, right? It can be a side hustle. Right? I'm going to use the term a part-time job. We used to call it back then, but today it's more than just a part-time job. It's more creating something that is yours on the side. I don't care if you're doing it after work, before work. You necessarily shouldn't do it during your work hours, right? But it can be after work, before hours, on weekends. Really carve out that time to do this thing and create this, call it what it is, a side hustle, right? Something that you're doing on the side that's paying you reasonably well, and you like it, basically, and people want to pay you for it. And in some cases, it might have an impact on the world, basically. So that's even great if it aligns with your values and it has an impact with the great. I would argue that you should make sure that this thing aligns with your value. But most people might say, it really doesn't matter. So really and truly, just think about what this thing can. And again, it doesn't have to align with your values at this moment in time, but if it is, great. But again, make sure that somebody wants to pay for it. Basically, make sure it's something that you're building that makes sense. And in some cases, some people might say, I want to do this at a high level, a pretty powerful level, because this could become my full-time gig, right? That can also be the case. But in most cases, it's really just making sure that you're doing something that you really enjoy, somebody's willing to pay you for it, it has an impact on the world or the people that surrounds you. And I would basically think about, like, for example, if you think of a marketing professional that on the side is running say, has some clients that they're doing marketing for, simple thing like that, right? If you really like marketing, it could just be you're doing some social media marketing for someone inside, or you're creating marketing plans, depending on how much experience you are, strategic marketing plan for people, right? So the thing about this side hustle, it really gives you a career safety net. That's the goal of it, right? So to think of this thing as a career, as your career insurance. It's primarily, and it doesn't have to be the first one that you try and it works, right? In most cases, it might not be, right? But that's okay. Just keep trying different ones. I see a lot of people that are creating a portfolio of real estate, basically, as their side hustle, and they're doing it in different ways because they enjoy probably like working with real estate. So you can do that, right? They're going out, they get real estate license, and they're selling houses, but they're also buying and selling for their own personal purposes, right? So all of these things you can do. People call it fancy name like flipping and all these things. So you can actually do that, right? So real estate can be that thing that you really enjoy, you like to do it, you want to provide a people like to get into Section 8 housing just because it really makes sense to help people in that regard. Again, that impact that you're having, somebody's willing to pay for it. So think about that, right? So it's your insurance against something, because again, your 9 to 5, your W-2 wage is really an agreement you have between yourself and the organization to pay you for your work, but it's not your identity. And in some cases, there's no safety net. There's no insurance. So creating that insurance is something. Again, most people ask, should I get a part-time job? I personally wouldn't. You want to create something that you're doing basically. But if the part-time job is the only thing that you know how to do at this time, potentially, but I wouldn't encourage you to potentially get a part-time job. You have a full-time job already. It's fine. You give it your best. You're there. You're adding value. You're creating wealth for them and yourself, hopefully, basically. So that's fine. I don't think you should find a part-time job. Just build what I would say, build something creative that somebody will pay you for and you enjoy doing, basically. And I think this thing could probably start out as a hobby and eventually just figure out how to monetize it, right? So, third, build a brand outside of your 9 to 5. Like literally figure out how to do that, right? If it's possible, because in some cases it might not be. So just be mindful of that, right? There might be something at your workplace where you really can't build the brand outside of your 9 to 5. But I would say if there's no restriction in doing that, I would say go ahead and do it. Basically, get on social media and build your brand outside of your 9 to 5. That way, people know who you are, know what you can do, why you want to do it, to sharpen your skills. Basically, in case of layoff, you're out there. You've been out there for number of probably years, just presenting yourself as this person, and therefore this will give you an opportunity to, if you want to go back in the 9 to 5 job, then give an opportunity to get a job relatively smoothly, or you can build this thing out that you have been doing for years, building your brand in terms of who you are. So if you're an HR professional or something like that, you can be on social media talking about what that looks like, build up that level of subject matter expert basically around these things, showing it, writing content, posting content around your relevant skill in HR, what you know, what you can do, comment on people posts, basically give feedback, opportunities to do that. So that's how I would basically think about some of these things, right? So so think of the thing that you're doing, and again, let's use the terminology that exists today, side hustle. It's more than just a hustle, right? To me, it's a leverage. You're creating leverage. You're creating this privilege, right? So you're thinking about it, right? So it can work, in other ways where it helps you with promotion. People see these things. Social media is a way of identifying who you are in terms of the value you can provide. So think of it as, use it in for promotion, use it in salary negotiation when that comes in. Uh, I would pretty much go as saying, when you're gaining this side hustle, try to reinvest it in yourself. When I say reinvest in yourself, I am talking about from career standpoint or training standpoint. Take some classes, take some certification, reinvest in yourself. But you can also reinvest it to build some wealth, right? Like put it in, like I just mentioned, real estate, or put it in the stock market where it's relatively. I don't want to use the word safe with the stock market, but basically the risk is reduced by just put it in a EFT basically. So sorry, ETF basically. So that's what I was potentially do. So that's for simplicity. Again, I don't want this to become a financial channel, because that's not what it's about. Basically, so just think of something pretty simple to put it. just for some reinvestment purposes. And again, because part of this is the financial security. So basically, so think strategically about what this look like. But again, first think of just reinvest in yourself. Take courses, basically tools that can make you better. Pay for tools, AI courses, AI tools that can make you better. And like I said, a small portion of it you can probably put somewhere, like in a Roth IRA or something that can give you a little bit of returns, some safety net financially. But really and truly, just think of it that way, right? So use it in those ways, as a leverage, as an opportunity to broaden your scope as you go through this basically creating this, what I think is a career privilege, to the point where you know that you have the privilege to, at some point, if you decide to make a decision, right? It might just be a life-changing decision that you're saying, okay, I don't want to get up every day and go to work from, say, 9 to 5, as we classify it, but in some cases it's more than just 9 to 5. Then you can feel free to do that. You can feel free to do that in terms of how you create this privilege. But more importantly, I think it's more than that, right? It's about working with people that you want to work with, that you like to work with, working in industries. It gives you the option to say you can work in industry where you feel you can add value. It's really relate to your values, basically as a person. And so it's more than that, right? Culturally, you want to work with people that identify with things that you identify with. So it's more than just, oh, can I leave this job or not, or if this job fire me. It's more you just saying, I you know what, I want to stay with my family. I really don't want to be spending 10 hours at work, and my family is getting what's left of me, basically. So I really want to stay home. So there's different options. I'm not here telling you what to do. Basically, I'm just giving you the reasons, what I've heard from people, why they want to do this as a career coach. What are they looking to do, basically. But again, try to make sure that when you're investing this thing in yourself, don't just think of this, oh, it's money I'm going to use to try to earn things. Invest in yourself, basically, for that growth. So again, take courses, pay for podcasts or listen to podcasts, newsletters, really good source, books, basically. Lots of those things can help you pay for a career coach if you're making enough money to pay for that. So there's okay. And like I said, a small portion of it can go towards thinking of, okay, let me put something in a real estate or something in the finance market. But again, just try to be conservative with what you're putting there. Nothing to be elaborate about. Basically, just it gives you some leeway in terms of how do you. A great way is if you have your 9 to 5, and and they're giving you max out your 401k, even if even if it push you into into a space where you're probably not making a good return money from that. So for basically, but that's fine if it takes, say, 20% of your income, and that's fine. That's okay, right? Because then the side hustle can make up for that, but push. And even if they don't, in some cases, if you're not comfortable putting directly, like opening up your own account, brokerage account, you can just put enough in your 401k to push it up to 20%. And I would still encourage you basically to do that. But the main emphasis here is to really, really build the knowledge set, that you invest in yourself, in terms of, if you can go back to school, go back to school. But if not, really take a course somewhere online. Really look for those certification. Really, really drive home the fact that you are spending time buying books and reading it, podcasts, watching it, newsletters, paying for certain newsletters if it makes sense. Totally okay. Subscribe to some of these things. Basically, I would say it's okay to have like one less, um, I don't know, Netflix subscription or something like that. I don't want to beat up on Netflix because I watch it sometimes, but you can have one less, right? You have like, they have 5 different things going on. No, no, no. Just like say, okay, I'll just have one where you just have a Netflix or Amazon alone, and then use that money to get a subscription for a newsletter. So you're learning something. So really emphasize doing that, right? And then also invest in going to conferences and events like those, because then you build this network, find really great people to talk to all the time and learn a lot, and meet new people that are doing fantastic stuff in the field, in the area that you want to build things. So spend some of the money there, basically. So reinvest in yourself. I really encourage you to do that, basically. So for me, career stability goes beyond financial stability. Now, don't get me wrong, financial stability is pretty important, right? So think about that in your right. So we want to make sure people are paying us for that, and in some cases, people are paying you really handsomely for it. So financially, stability is really important. So think of that as a piece of the strategy, right? It's not just one strategy. Riding around on a yacht somewhere, and I don't want to get into the people on social media that are doing that. They're doing it for their own purposes, right? Um, that that's not part of it, right? If you are able to build that type of wealth, great, buy the yacht. If you're not able to build that type of wealth, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can find financial security and career security through that, basically, even on a nominal income, right? It's just how you think about it. It's really just how you identify, basically using some of these things pretty well strategically to make sure that all of the pieces are in play and they're working for you. But equally important is to make sure that so many people go to work and the job become a part of their identity. So they don't think about growth. They don't think about how do I onboard new knowledge. What they learn at the company is what it is. So when they leave, they find themselves without options, and that depresses them for months, if not years, because they no longer is this person. They're no longer the vice president at Goldman Sachs, right? And that was your identity. Every time they go somewhere, that was your identity, basically. And that's fine. That's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. But creating that thing on the side where you can say, I'm a finance person, as opposed to I'm a vice president at Goldman Sachs. I'm a finance person. I know finance. I understand finance. I can talk about finance. You can then start teaching people about finance, basically, and they'll pay you. So kind of think about that when you're building your brand outside of that, and taking all these other courses outside on certifications that will give you some of these things. So when you walk away, it's pretty easy when that happens, right? So think of your career stability not just in terms of financial stability, right? Again, financial stability is part of that, I would say, piece of it. Basically, so if you look at some quadrant, that could be, say, the third or fourth quadrant. But in the beginning, just try to think of you and your brand, and what are the things that you need to do to build this brand, and what are the courses, what are the podcasts, what are the newsletters you need to, like, onboard these knowledge to build up this level of career stability there, right? So think of just taking control of your future. It's thinking, where am I choosing the right side hustle that aligns with my career goals? So if you're doing a job that you're doing it because you need to make money and it doesn't align with your career goals, fine. Sometimes you have to do that. But your side hustle can be the thing where you're like, okay, let me do this, really onboard this. This is what I want to do. You may always want to just start. I have a client who always wanted to do crochet, and that's basically what she loves. She saw her grandmom taught her that, and that's what she wanted to do. So we create a thing where she built a really good side hustle just doing that. And she has a 9 to 5 when she go there, and she work hard, and she come home on the weekends. She's doing her crocheting, and she built her social media page around that, and they're moving through that process, and she's doing pretty well, and it's growing, and she enjoyed, and she's training other people to do this. So again, these are things that you can do, but that's her side also, but that's what she wants to really do. But she's 9 to 5, that's paying, giving her a 401k, giving her health insurance, and she doesn't want to leave it, and she shouldn't leave it if she doesn't want to leave it. That's perfectly okay, right? So just think about that. So there's nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5, basically, but don't make it become your identity so that when it's no longer there, most people are just so depressed they can't get up. They took them months to really, they're so depressed, right? So you want to think about this, and that's what we. So when we talk about career privilege, that's the privilege you want. The privilege you want is to say, if this thing is not here, it doesn't affect me at all. It really doesn't affect me, basically. And if you feel like, okay, this doesn't fit with me anyway, and you want to walk away, you're perfectly okay. So it's a combination of both in terms of, you can look at it as basically a pyramid or a quadrant, and you fit it in it, right? So it's a pyramid. Where does the finance drop in? Is it the bottom? Is it the top? Where does your mental health and your family fit in that, basically? And how do you do these things, right? So you want to identify some of these things, and you're building career resilience. That's really what you're doing. You're building this career resilient. That you're sitting there saying, okay, if and when that day comes, how do I walk away from this, or how does this affect me? And look around. And again, like I said, part of it is finance, but it's not the full picture. It's the mental picture. Some people have lost someone and they still lose their job, and they're still depressed for months, even though they can go out and probably buy anything they want still, right? But they weren't prepared for this, uh, losing this job that they've been identified with for 20, 30 years. So they feel depressed. You can no longer go to these social parties and say, I'm the Goldman Sachs CEO, or, I probably wouldn't say vice president or something. So you're making, if you're at that really top level of your income, still understand that this thing can go away. And your role, basically, at this point in time, is really just not just create the financial stability, but to create the mental stability, to create the physical stability, to create this career resilience within it. So all these things, basically. So I say, start now thinking about what the future look like. Where do you see yourself, basically? So there's a lot of people out there talking about managing money pretty well, basically. So I'm not going to dive into that in this video. That's basically, you can probably go there. There are probably a million people just talk about. I don't even know why there's so many people on social media just talk about finance, money. I think by now most people should understand this, basically, because there's so many people. Unless you're entering a world like 1917, I don't know. I don't know. Even if you're that age, there's so many people talking about finance. At some point, just like sit down and listen to somebody you trust and you like, and you learn enough, or read some books, basically, about finance. But finance is not, creating a financial stability is not as hard as people think it is. You don't need 50 million guru to tell you to buy Bitcoin. Honestly, it's not as hard as this is. It's just creating financial stability is pretty simple. It's pretty simple. What is really hard for a lot of people is that mental piece of it, that privilege piece of it. The idea to say, you know what, I don't want to work 9 to 5 or whatever it is anymore, basically, because I want to spend some time with my family, without feeling guilty that, oh, my entire life is identified by this thing. And you feel ashamed. You can no longer go to these meetings and these big social thing where you're sitting down and, oh, this person is this and this. And that's the part that drags them. It's not the money. It's really not about the money. They can make money any way they want. They probably have millions of dollars saved. Most of what affects the people is that identity that they are built around this thing. And when it leaves, or when they're deciding to leave, they just don't know how to leave. Right? And then you have the bottom half of this picture, where people just can't leave because they have so much debt, so much expense. So you need to find this medium that makes sense for you. What is the problem right now? And in this pyramid, the problem could be finance. So, okay, let's go about fixing the finance piece of it. basically. Let's get this finance piece because you're going up this pyramid, and the pyramid just could be, I want to make sure I can survive. Okay, fine. Let's just do that. Let's make sure you can survive. So that's the finance piece of it. And just start in the simplest way. And we have all heard this over and over and over. You basically just, if you're working somewhere and there's a 401k, I would argue you don't want to think too much about, let's say you don't want to think too much about the stock market every single day, then just max out your 401k and even put more. It's fine. Basically, there's nothing wrong. You can put more on the max because think about it this way. When that money comes out of your account, you just don't see it. And if you don't see it, you can't spend it. You, at the end of the day, you pay taxes. But because that taxes comes out of your account before you see, you don't realize how much you're paying in taxes. You just know you pay taxes. So do the same thing with your 401k or your whatever it is, 401k, 401a, 403b, wherever you're working. Just do the same thing. Like just like say, hey, listen, just take out 20% out of my account, out of my paycheck every month and send it to this place, basically. Or max out my 401k, but put an next 10%. So let's say they have a 10% match or something like that, right? Just put the 10 and then here's take an next 10, 20%, just put it there, fine. And that's it. Basically, the allocation is there and that's fine, right? Again, you can dive into how you change the allocation and all those things. Yeah, everybody's talk about it, right? We all know some simple allocation for right now. If you're some more sophisticated person, I don't need to tell you what to do. You know what to do if you're more sophisticated and you understand. To the people who don't really understand and don't know, just keep it simple, right? Don't whatever you do. I know this is hard, and I don't want people to like jump all over me, basically. But if you can, don't carry a credit card debt. Like, really think about that. It's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive, right? You're paying 15 to 25%, basically, and that 15% to 25% is really taken away from the money you should be saving. So don't carry a credit card debt, basically. So most of us are going to have a student loan debt. Perfectly okay. Just find a way to pay towards the credit card debt as much as you as much as you can, right? So if you have a student loan debt, that's an investment you made in yourself. Perfectly okay. I know some people say, "Oh, you shouldn't carry a student loan debt." You know what? That might be true, but in some cases, you made an investment in yourself, and that's perfectly okay, basically. And for most of us, that's an investment that we make in ourselves. And I think that's okay. You're making that investment in yourself, just like paying for the podcast, just like paying for the course. You made that investment in yourself. That's fine. That just figure out how to leverage that, basically, to make enough money to take your time, pay that down. Basically, for the credit card, I just say whatever you can pay in cash, just don't do it. It's simple, right? You don't need a, again, I'm not here to tell you guys what to do, but we don't need a brand new car to drive, right? We can drive a used car. It's perfectly okay, right? So just like manage those things in the beginning so that you're maxing out your investment and just find a way to live normal. You don't want to like live, if you're young and in your 20s, there's no reason for you to like live in some lavish place by yourself. Find a roommate, let them pay half of it, like buy a house. Some people are going to like, no, why do you buy a house? But we need somewhere to live, right? So if you buy a house and rent out one of the rooms, somebody pay your mortgage, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, basically. So somebody pay your mortgage and you live free, house free, basically. So that's fine, basically. So you have a roof over your head and an asset that's being appreciated over time, basically. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's the piece of the financial security that you can think about if you look at it as quadrant. And in the beginning, you're saying that's what I want to do, basically, because having an asset that you own for probably 20, 30 years will really appreciate and make things like, so if you're having a good job and you can find that down payment to buy this house and you can find a good roommate that can pay you rent the room to, perfectly fine. You already have a roommate, basically. So what's the big deal if it's you own it and they're paying your thing and you take your stuff? Now, on the flip side, if you feel like, no, I'd rather just rent, but you had the down payment, again, fine. Put that money into a high savings account. They're out there today paying 4, 3, 4, in some cases 5%. Put in a high savings account. Probably leave it there if you don't want to risk too much in the stock market. Basically, but there's nothing wrong with put like a small amount in some stock market on a regular basis, dollar cost average. Like put $100 every month, right? And if you're pretty young, you could probably do that for several years, right? Basically, and just leave it. This is perfectly okay. So we can think of the finance piece of it that we want to get over, that becomes like, say, the lower quadrant, or one quadrant, or the lower part of the pyramid, in terms of how do we create this financial security. But again, once we get past the financial security, it now become okay, the mental piece of it, right? Will this allow me to, when you get to that age, because you will get to that age where you have a family and you would like to stay home with your family, if you choose that. If that's what you want, then that's okay. You can make that choice, right? So you create this career stability that you can say, okay, fine. So you have the privilege. This privilege that you're saying, or you're working for a firm and it's pretty toxic, and you say, you know what, I'm really not enjoying these people at all. You can get up and say, I'm walking away. You can say, you know what, I might not have a job for the next 6 months, but that's fine. I don't want to work here. That's perfectly okay. I don't want to work in this industry. It's not for me. But you've created this privilege. So when you get this job and you're working at these jobs, I don't care what it is, and you're making, say, for those of us who can make 60K, 70K, 80K, 90K, 100K, then you're in this top of, first part of your career where you're making some really decent money, basically. And that can be enough. Most of the population is doing that, right? If you're, so with your side hustle, like we mentioned, if you're doing something and you're making an extra 20, 30K, right there, you have enough money to build really, really good wealth. So you can stop thinking about that. Now it's more about, okay, I'm going to make choices that fits within who I want to be as a person. Could be, I want to go home early and spend time with my family. It could be, I'm going to take care of my health. I sacrificed my health for 20, 30 years building this thing. I want to take care of my health. It could be, I want to do something more impactful. I've seen people who have worked at, I was listening to this podcast with this young lady who worked at Goldman Sachs for a number of years, but then just thought about, okay, what is it that she wants to do with the second half of her life? And she realized that most women are not getting the same opportunity as men to create wealth for some reason. So she created a company basically to support women in their financial journey. And that's the impact she wanted. But she had a privilege because she basically that first layer, she built up that financial stability, basically, where she was able to invest in the stock market, invest in a massive real estate portfolio. And now she's actually invested as an angel investor as well as building her own company now. So she could walk away from Goldman Sachs basically because she has taken care of the basic need, right? That basic need, that financial security. And now she was thinking about what the impact she wants basically. And she created this privilege that she could walk away and do this. And there's going to be a next stage where she probably said, you know what? I want to have kids. I want to stay home with my kids or something like that. Or she might choose not to. But at least she has the privilege to make this choice. And that's what you want to think about as you go through this, right? You can push yourself as hard as you can in your 20s, basically early in, to onboard lots of success and risk. And basically, like I said, push as hard as you can, make education a piece of this in the early stage, basically, whether it's going to school and pay for it or taking lots of different courses and networking with the right people, whichever one works better for you, do it, basically. Because again, it doesn't have to be going to school or going to university. It doesn't have to be that. It really could be for some people, university just doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for them, basically. So it doesn't have to be that. It's really just you thinking strategically about what works for you and how do I do this, right? It could be that you build something and somebody pay you a lot of money for it and you come into this massive windfall. Okay, fine. Don't just get up tomorrow morning and say, okay, because you come into $10 million or $5 million or $1 million, I'm going to go buy a new car. Don't, just keep thinking, I need to create this privilege, basically. So if it's reoccurring where you can continuously get $1 million or $10 million or that keep growing, okay, great. You can see that you're on a trajectory to keep making money, and then you can make the estimation that, okay, fine, there's okay if I go buy a new car because I'm going to keep creating this wealth. But strategically, let's think about how are you putting this money aside, right? So take a small portion of it. I've heard this over and over, and I've tried it, and it makes a lot of sense. Just pay yourself first. And what do I mean by that? When that money comes in, think about, can I put some money inside this as an investment? And that investment can split between, like I said earlier, some courses, some podcasts for yourself, keep building up your knowledge, and a portion of it can then be invest in the stock market, basically, or something, or buy real estate, one of those, basically. So now you have that. And every time you get the money, just do that. Pay yourself. And then the rest, whatever is left, just, okay, fine, do whatever you want to do with it. Go buy that, buy that thing. But try doing that. Like, it really makes, it's a powerful, just think of how the government pays itself first. When you get that, if you're working 9 to 5, they just take that money out. Now, if you're a small business owner, that's a whole different situation, basically, because then you are left to pay your taxes, and you have to figure that out with your accountant to make sure that you're paying your taxes. But if you're a W-2, they make sure they take the tax out first, right? So do that for yourself, even if you're a business owner. When you make that money and you're sitting there, pay yourself first. Like, oh, okay, that money comes in, you're sitting there saying, don't think, I'm going to go buy a car or clothes first. Think, okay, let me take out 20% of this money and put it aside. I'm going to use this to onboard new knowledge through mediums of courses, could be college or university, books, podcasts, networking, go to events, all of those things. And then now you have 80% to decide what do I do? And hopefully you call your accountant and then say, can you take out some taxes for me? Basically. So, and then what's left, you said, okay, I can go buy a car, basically. So that's fine. So take out that 20%, and that 20% could be, like I said, a function of, okay, I'm going to invest in something, real estate, stocks, basically, reinvest in your company. If you have a company, basically you're reinvesting in your company, but you also invest in yourself through different courses. And then whatever is left, you can, pay your taxes and buy something that you feel like you need to buy. That's perfectly okay. But throughout this process, what you're trying to do is give yourself this privilege. I've seen so many people on the business side who start a company, the company fail. And again, that's even harder because this is your company you started. This is your baby, your child, and this thing failed. It's your identity. It's part of you. So that's even harder. So again, even that case, it's still hard, but at least you were doing something for yourself. And I still require you to kind of still build up that privilege, but it's not as hard as when you're working for someone and all your identity in it, and then you have no control and they fire you, or basically. But so all these things just come down to how you create this privilege in terms of, so you see people saying they're leaving their job, or they decide not to work 9 to 5 anymore, or decide to go volunteer or do something, and people say, oh, how they have privilege, they're born rich or something. No, a lot of us are not born rich. We basically sat down and asked ourselves, how do we get this privilege? Basically, myself included, I have to admit, right? It's more just sitting down and ask yourself, how do I create this privilege? Basically. And I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing, but I'm still thinking about consistently, how do I have this privilege? Where does this privilege come from? Basically. So it is imperative that you're thinking about that. Where does this privilege come from? So if I want to create career, so I don't think of it as job security. Some people say job security. I can't create job security. Because I can do everything possible that I need to do, and the company still fire me. There's nothing I can do. I was reading an article today where Amazon is saying to people, if you relocate to where I want you to relocate, you are going to be fired. What if you have a family and you can't relocate? They don't care. So you're out of a job because you have a family and you can't relocate. Your kids might be in a school, you don't want to pull them up from the school, but nobody's thinking about that, right? So if you don't have that privilege to say, you know what, I like you, Amazon, but I can't do this, and Amazon is going to say, okay, but you are totally okay with it. You're totally okay with that. By the way, full disclosure, I own Amazon shares. Why do I own Amazon shares? Because I know they're going to do stuff like this. They're going to do whatever it takes to make money. So you just need to make sure that you own Amazon shares. So if you're working there, obviously you should get shares. But again, hopefully you're getting some kind of stock options or something. You're taking advantage of it, or even share buying. You're taking advantage of it. But I buy shares in these companies on the stock market, right? Basically, because why? I know these companies are going to do whatever it takes to make money, right? So you have to go along. Like it's fine. It's totally okay to make sure that you're doing these things, right? And again, if you don't want to do these things, you don't understand, you don't care about this. Like I said, there's enough index funds or ETFs out there that you can actually just talk about. They're pretty simple to buy, basically, and most of them are pretty good in terms of the cost that they charge you. So again, seek out the financial gurus that are out there. Good ones, by the way. Really, just look for the good ones, because there's so many people out there just talking. And just seek out the good ones, basically. I don't know, but again, just like keep it pretty simple, basically. But if so if you're buying things like that, just like look for the things you understand. Basically, Amazon is simple, right? For me, it was simple. It was just, these things are selling. This company is selling products that people can buy. And I know Americans love to shop. Like, I know Americans love to shop. So, of course, Amazon is going to do pretty well. Americans like to shop. So, it was an easy buy for me. Okay, I'm going to buy Amazon. People like to shop. Basically, people like to shop. So, I just like, okay, I'm going to own Amazon. So, something like that, right? And I also know that these companies would do whatever it takes to be successful. So, our interests are aligned. So, I make sure I buy that, right? So, it's just simple things like that, right? So, you can think about that from your standpoint. So create that piece of that, whether it's a quadrant or you're going to use a quadrant or a pyramid, basically to say the first bucket I'm filling, which is probably financial. But I'm moving up a little bit, right? I'm thinking more now beyond just finance. I want career, not job stability, because jobs just come and go, but career stability. So in my career path, I can walk away from any of these companies, still continue to function in this career path that you've built up along the way, basically. So again, that's part of the things that we mentioned earlier. Brand yourself, your personal brand across social media, basically. Let people know what you're doing. Talk about it consistently. Even if your company against it, even if your company is against it, that's perfectly okay, right? They might be against it, they might not be against it, but even if they are, find a way to still do it. Find a way to still do it in a way that it fits within the company's um, rules and regulation, basically. So just make sure that you think through that. I know I have some friends who work in the finance market, and really and truly, they have to make sure that they disclose things that they own. They're buying certain things. I used to work in finance, so I understand that piece of it. So there comes a time when you just have to make sure that you're disclosing what you're doing and how you're doing it, and make sure it fits within the rules and regulation of what the company wants. But find a way to brand yourself. Like really find a way to make sure that you're talking about that in terms of that. So building that career resilience is pretty important. Not job security, right? People like to say job security. Job security is just having a job that you're there working. It's more career stability and security. You're building around your career, basically, which is, in some cases, probably 50 years. But it can be working for somewhere and it can be not. But you've built up this robust career dynamics, right? So, how do you get started today? So, think about that, right? How do you get started? Again, it could just be what you're doing currently. Identify the strengths in what you're doing. Is it what you're doing really what you want to continue doing? Great, basically. So identify that. How do I monetize the skills that I've built up in this organization? How do I do that? So think about those things. Ask yourself those questions. What does it make? What does it work for you to basically build up this skills and these skills, and how do you monetize it, right? So think of that, then ask yourself, where is this side hustle that's just really low risk? So if you're working and you can do this after work or before work, great. Then allocate those time consistently, making sure you're doing this consistently. Allocate these times consistently, right? Build your professional brand. I'm going to keep emphasize that you have to build your personal professional brand, like consistently building that, whatever it takes. Just keep building that and get out there, go to events, pay for those events, network and seek out opportunities to keep building what's going on, and you'll be fine. Over time, you will basically. So that's why I would recommend that you get started today. So basically, that's the idea, right? So think about, how do I get started today? Identify what strengths that are out there. Look for something that you really enjoy. Somebody will pay you for it. May have an impact or it may not, but that would be great. So think about these things out there, right? And it can just be, I would say, don't try to start big if you don't. Basically, think of just starting small with one thing, but just get started. Just get started, right? And build your professional brand. Really push forward, and like I said, invest some money back in yourself. Go to networking events, seek out these opportunities. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you do me a favor. Really, really, I will enjoy this. And basically, it's great for all of us. Just do me a favor and just subscribe to our channel. That would be awesome. Just so it's easier for the metrics on Google to push more content to you guys if you enjoy it. If this resonate with you and you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. Really enjoyed. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys soon.